Okay, hello, hello. Welcome back to the next intermediate lesson on SEDA College Online. I'm very happy that you could join me today and that you could come for the next lesson in my series. I'm very excited for today's lesson because we are going to continue an idea that we have been talking about throughout this intermediate course. So it's going to be very good because we're going to kind of, finish and round a concept we have been working on. So I hope you are comfortable. I hope you are ready. If you have a pencil, paper, notepad, get that ready so that we can begin the lesson. So what are we going to be finishing today? Well, those are conditionals. So I'm going to do a little bit of a conditional review. I talked about all of the conditionals in the series so far. I've talked about first and I've talked about second. So I'm going to do a little bit of review of those two so that just in case maybe you have forgotten, or maybe if this is your first video, we can all be together. And then I will talk about the third conditional, and this is the new idea for this lesson. And then at the end, I'm going to talk about making adjectives and adverbs. If you watched yesterday's lesson, we talked a bit about derivation. And so that's the ability to change one word into another word. And so we're going to practice a bit of that with adjectives and adverbs. All right, so let's begin. Let's start the review with the first conditional. So if you remember, the first conditional is to talk about future situations and their possible consequences. So the first conditional is always real. You're always talking about real things and real possibilities. And so we make the first conditional with the present simple and will. That's how you know it's real, because we're using will to show intent. I will do this or I will do that. You show the strong intent for the future. And so if you think about the first conditional, you're talking about now. So you're standing right now in the present, and you're talking about two possible futures. One, if this happens, I'll do this, and if not, well, then I'll do this. And so that's what's most important for the first conditional. Always remember, it's for real outcomes, real futures, and real things that are possible for your life and for your situation. So, for example, if it rains this afternoon, I will take the bus home. So I'm standing right now, and I say, if it rains, I'll do this. I'll take the bus. If it doesn't rain, well, I'll do something different. I might walk, I'll run, I'll do something different. But you are talking about these real possibilities. It is possible that it rains, so we use the first conditional. Or my other example, this one is for me. I will play video games if I have free time. Always true. I'll always play video games. And so I'm standing right now and I'm saying, if I have free time, I'll play video games, future one. If I don't have free time, well, then I'll be working, so future two. So that's what the first conditional is talking about. Always talking about those real possibilities. They are likely. You believe they will happen. Okay, so then we go to the second conditional, and this is the next one that we talked about. We talked about this a few lessons ago. And so this one now, instead of real, we're doing hypothetical. So imaginary situations, things that are not real, things that are not possible. And so you're just you're thinking about the world, you're thinking about the universe, what can happen, what could happen. And so we make this with a different form. So instead of using the present tense and will, we use past. We use the past simple and would. So now instead of talking in the present, we put it all in the past to show that it's not real, it's hypothetical. And so this is like you're standing right now and you're thinking about the future. But your future, you know your future. So you're imagining a different future now. So for example, if I won the lottery, I would buy a house. So I know my future. I probably will not win the lottery. I don't play, so I know I cannot win the lottery. I do not buy tickets. So I'm imagining, well, though, if I did, I would do this. Or Sandra would go to the park if she had more time. So I know my future. She will not go to the park. And now I'm just imagining, oh, if I had more time, if she had more time, this is what she would do. So this is the second conditional. Always those hypothetical, those fake situations. All right. So now let's talk about the third conditional. So the first conditional is for the present and the real. The second conditional is for the past and the hypothetical. Well, the third conditional then is about different past possibilities. So what do I mean? Different past possibilities. So the third conditional we use to talk about if you had done something different in the past, how would the future be different? So now you're looking at changing the past to make the future different. It is still hypothetical. It is still not real, imaginary. But now you are looking at what happened in the past. If something different happened, how would it change? And we make that now with the past perfect and the present and the past participle. Sorry, not present, the past. So we say if plus the past perfect, and then we use would and the past participle, would have. And so now by using these perfect tenses, so past perfect and modal perfect, we are showing that we're talking about a past action that is true. That's why we do it this way. So I know it might not be very clear yet. What am I talking about? So imagine this. You're talking now. So we're standing in the present. I am talking now. But I'm thinking about the future, and I'm thinking about the present. And so I look into the past. I look into the past and say, well, if I had done this, this would be the future now. So I'm imagining if something different happened in the past, if I changed my action, I changed my behavior, the future would be different. So I'm imagining now this new future standing in the present. So for example, if she had studied more, she would have passed the test. So I'm standing now. She did not pass the test. She failed. But if we went back and she had studied more, well, she would have passed. That's the new future. Or Sarah would have got the job if she had been on time. So we know now Sarah did not get the job. She was late. The interviewer was very unhappy because she was late, so she didn't get the job. But if we go back and we say if she had been on time, so she was on time, she would have got the job, the new future. So that's what the third conditional is doing. We're looking back in the past and we're saying, well, if I had changed, if something were different, or if someone had changed their action, what is the outcome now? What is the new consequence? So that's what the three conditionals are doing. You have the first conditional, which is for real, the second conditional, which is totally hypothetical, totally fake, and then the third conditional, which is hypothetical but connected to past events, because now we're talking about alternatives, basically alternative outcomes. I do have some additional notes for the third conditional as well. So, for example, other modal verbs of deduction can be used in the third conditional. So you're kind of if you remember, we talked about modal deduction a few lessons ago, and these are things like might, may, could, must. Saying she must have been late, she might have gotten lost, she may have forgotten her umbrella, making these kind of guesses about situations. And that's essentially what the third conditional is doing. You are looking into the past and you're guessing, how is the future different if I change this, if I change this. So you can use other modal verbs of deduction. Specifically, you can use could or you can use might. And this is instead of would. So instead of saying she would pass the test, you could say she could or she might. And I'll show some examples of that here in just a moment. Additionally, you can also do this and why we do this is to make the outcome less certain. So you talk about could or might because would is very certain. If I say, would I think this is what will happen, whereas could and might are a little weaker. So, for example, if she had studied harder, she would have passed the test. This is, 100%. I believe that if she studied harder, no doubt she would have passed the test. But I can say might. So maybe I'm not so certain. Maybe, many things are possible, but I say if she had studied harder, she might have passed the test. I don't know. Maybe she still would have had problems, or maybe not. Maybe if she studied more, she still would have failed. It makes it a little weaker, because would is very certain. I believe she would have passed the test 100%. And now I'm thinking, if she'd already started, maybe she might have passed 50, 60%. So just know you can change that. Could, though, could is slightly different, and we use could for a situation where I believe she had or he had the ability to do this. So remember, can and could always have an ability idea. No matter the hypothetical or the situation, you're always imagining some ability. So you can say, if he had learned to sing, he could have become a singer. And this is more just to show ability. If he had learned this, he would have had the ability to do this, so he could have become a singer. Would and might are really for 100%, maybe 50%, and then you can also say could if you want to talk about that option of ability. But just know these are other ways that you can see the third conditional. You can see it with might. You can see it with could. So I just wanted to show it so that you know it is another option, and if you see it, you know what it's talking about. All right. This is the real fun. I'm very excited for this because I love this pronunciation. So, it has been many, many lessons, and we have not talked about it for a long time. And I'm sure, I know, you have been waiting. You have been wondering, where is this? Well, it's contractions. They're back again. They never left. They'll always return. So you've been waiting for it. You've been wanting it. So let's talk about it. Contractions. Specifically, contractions with the third conditional. So we have in the third condition auxiliary verb had and auxiliary verb would. So we have now two contractions that are possible. We can make I had or I'd, you had or you'd, he had, she had, or it had, we had, they had. They all can contract to the D. I'd, you'd, he'd, she'd, it'd, we'd, they'd. Would is the same. I'd, you'd, he'd, she'd, it'd, we'd, they'd. So the contraction is actually the same. It's the same set for both auxiliary verbs. So how do you know? How do you know if your contraction is they would or they had? Or they had or they would if it's the same? Well, you always have to look at the verb next. So remember that these auxiliary verbs have rules. The verb after the auxiliary always has a specific form, and this form is always the same. After would, you always have the base form. It's always after any modal verb. Any modal verb, you have the base form. So if you have contraction, they'd, with base form like have, okay, that's would. They would have. And for had, after have, auxiliary verb have or past had, you always have the past participle. That's the rule. After have comes past participle. So you can look, they, okay, well, what's after? Saved. Okay, that's a past participle. So I have they'd saved. So that's really how you can check which one are you talking about. Is it would or is it had? Well, then if it's past participle, it's had. If it's base form, it's would. That's one way. But really, these contractions are kind of simple. If they'd have saved more money, they'd have bought a new house. But what is special, and this is very special, this is why I'm excited, is because auxiliary verb have will always contract. English speakers, we do not like have. We hate it. We don't want to say have. We want to make it a contraction to everything. So this means we have double contractions. Yes, they are possible. They are real. Have can actually make a contraction with would. And I'm sure you know this. You can say would have or should have. She would have gone to the store if she had time. Well, what English speakers do with very quick, very rapid pronunciation is we make the contraction of have and would, and then we make the contraction of would. So we get these: I'd have, you'd have, he'd have, she'd have, we'd have, they'd have, in very natural, rapid pronunciation. Never write. Don't write these. This is only pronunciation. But this kind of thing, this form, is why English can be so difficult to understand by listening, because English speakers are always making contractions with words. We make as many contractions as we can. I don't know, maybe we're lazy. I don't know. But it's one of the reasons. So, for example, in number 1, if they'd saved more money, they'd have bought a new home by now. So that is really the natural way that I would say this sentence. Oh, well, if they'd saved more money, they'd have bought a new house by now. And we're making these connections between the grammar words, these auxiliary verbs. We don't like to say auxiliary verbs. We use as many contractions as we can. So let's have fun. Let's try to say it. Let's try to say the double contractions. So, I'd have, you'd have, he'd have, she'd have, we'd have, and they'd have. All right, let's try this sentence here. If they'd saved more money, they'd have bought a new house by now. They'd have bought a new house by now. I understand it can be very difficult. And so I always say contractions like this are a choice, an option. You do not need or you do not have to say them, but you will hear them always. You will hear this from an English speaker. So, just know that they are real, know that we will say them, and then if you like it, say it. If you like it, it's good. But you don't have to. Everyone will understand if you say, if they had saved more money, they would have bought a new house by now. That's fine. Everyone will understand. But just know you will hear, if they'd saved more money, they'd have bought a new house by now. That's the more natural pronunciation. All right, so we've learned all about the third conditional. Let's do some practice making it. The form can be a little tricky, so I'm going to leave my notes here of if, past perfect, would have, past participle. Remember that. So I'm going to show you a sentence with the verbs removed, and you need to try to complete it. So do your best to think, how do I complete this sentence? If you, to the party, you, it. Yeah, so this third conditional, all of them will be third conditional. So you just want to try to use this form correctly. If you, to the party, you, it. So we need past perfect of come, and then past participle for enjoy. All right, let's see if you are correct. So had come, would have enjoyed. So if you had come to the party, you would have enjoyed it. So there we have our would have past participle, and then our past perfect had come. Okay. Number 2. I, for the job, if I, about the advertisement. I, for the job, if I, about the advertisement. Yeah. So again, we're just looking which one is past perfect, which one is would have past participle. And always remember if there are irregular verbs. Yeah, you know, no, it's irregular. All right, let's see. I would have applied for the job if I had known about the advertisement. So now our if is second. So always remember your not pronunciation, your punctuation. So comma, if is first, no comma, if is second. And so we have our I would have applied, and then had known past perfect. All right, number 3. If you, to the airport, I, my flight. And now we have a negative, so always remember what to do, negative. If you, me, to the airport, I, my flight. Okay. So if you had taken me to the airport, I wouldn't have missed my flight. So this is the main clause here. I wouldn't have missed my flight, and then the conditional clause, if you had taken me to the airport. And no for pronunciation here. This again, honestly, this would make a contraction. I wouldn't have missed my flight. Always with have, we're going to make the contraction always. All right, number 4. If the ticket's online, we to wait in the queue. So another negative. If the ticket's online, we to wait in the queue. All right, so had bought and wouldn't have needed. So we have our conditional past perfect. If we had bought the tickets online, we wouldn't have needed, so negative past participle needed, to wait in the queue. So in this sentence, it means I didn't buy the tickets before. I am in the cinema now, and maybe I'm standing here saying, well, if we'd bought them online, we wouldn't have needed to wait. We could be in the movie now. All right, final sentence. David, his essay, if you, him. So double negative, not finish, not help. David, his essay, if you, him. Right, just have to find which is the conditional clause, so past perfect, and which is the main clause, would have past participle. All right, let's see what you have. David wouldn't have finished his essay if you hadn't helped him. So we've got a double negative, meaning I did help, he did finish, and so the other is not possible. He wouldn't have finished if you hadn't helped him. All right. Yes, I realize the third conditional can be a little tricky because of the double perfect here of past perfect and modal perfect. So just keep practicing with it and keep always remember your past participle forms. That's the hardest part here, is remembering the ed or the irregular verb. So one more practice for this lesson. I know I usually only have one. I have two. So now I want to test you first, second, or third conditional. So you no need for grammar or to complete the sentence. You just need to say, is this a first conditional, a second conditional, or a third conditional? So for example, if you had taken longer, we would have gotten caught in the rain. First, second, or third, what do you think? Have a guess in your head, and then we'll continue. So if you had taken longer, we would have gotten caught in the rain. And that is third conditional. So we have had taken past perfect, would have gotten modal perfect, third conditional. All right, next. If I won the lottery, I would buy a new home. First, second, or third. If I won the lottery, I would buy a new house. All right, the answer is second. We have our past tense, if I won, and then our would verb in the base, would buy. So we know it's second, hypothetical. All right, next. They will open the new factory if the council approves it. First, second, or third. I think you can guess this one. We have a third, we have a second. So this is first conditional. We have will, modal verb, and then present tense. So we know it's a first. So it's always this way. Past perfect, modal perfect is third. Past tense, would, base verb is second. Will, present, is first. Always. So let's try now with some contractions. She'd go to the party if she didn't have to study. Yeah, so now it's a little trickier. Now we've got contractions. She'd go to the party if she didn't have to study. First, second, or third. All right, make your guess, make your guess. Let's check. Second. Yeah, this is a second conditional. Why? Well, we have past tense. We have didn't have, and so we see didn't here, and so we know that this is a past tense sentence. And then here we have base form go, so I know this is would. She would go to the party if she didn't have to study. Second conditional. How about this one? You'd have won the competition if you'd been 1 second faster. First, second, or third. Yeah, you have to really look at those contractions. What is the verb here? What form? What is the verb here? What form? And that will help. All right, make your guess. First, second, third. Correct answer is third. And now we're back to perfect. So I have here base form, so I know this is would. You would have won the competition if you, I know this is been, so this is the past participle, so I know had been 1 second faster, so third conditional. Okay, final question. We'll go to the cinema if it's still open tonight. First, second, or third. All right, have your guess? It's first. Well, now we have will, and it is still open, so we know if we have will, that's present tense, first conditional, clearly. All right, so just a fun game, first, second, or third, to test your identification skills. All right. So let's go and do those adjective and adverbs. Check those word derivations. So I'm just going to talk a bit about how you can make different words and the prefixes or suffixes that we use to do this. So I've got some common nouns here. Luck, fortune, comfort, patience, and care. And I'm going to show you how to make the positive and negative adjective and adverb. And we do this in usually a pretty regular way. The tricky thing is that noun to adjective is not always the same suffix. So for example, luck becomes lucky, fortune becomes fortunate, comfort becomes comfortable, patience becomes patient, and care becomes careful. So adjectives have many different suffixes. In English, it has a lot to do with history. You know, does this word come from English? Does this word come from Greek? Does this word come from French? Does this word come from Latin? So there's a lot of different options here based on that. Really, unfortunately, this is another area where memorization is most, reading and experiencing these. However, to make them negative, it's a little simpler. So to make the negative adjective, for most, you take the adjective and add un. So unlucky, unfortunate, uncomfortable. And we'll add a prefix here, a negative prefix for most adjectives. You might know patient is a little different because we have impatient, so we have a different negative prefix. But this is the system for most adjectives. So you have the positive adjective, and then to make negative, you add some prefix like un or im. However, careful, it's a little tricky. There's always an exception. You know, English is full of exceptions, and careful actually becomes careless. We have this adjective less, or this suffix less, which attaches to a few different ones. It is the adjectives that take full. So for example, careful, careless, helpful, helpless. So if an adjective finishes in full, the negative is less. Otherwise, you can add a prefix, un, im, in, ear, a negative prefix. All right, so now how do we make them adverbs? Well, to make adverbs, you take the adjective and you add ly. So ly is the adverb suffix in English, and it's very, very common. We use it for many, many adjectives. So luckily, or fortunately, sorry, we're jumping. Comfortably, patiently. But of course, what do we do here? Is it the same? It is. Carefully, we go back to the positive and we add ly. So the ly suffix is very, very common. It will work for almost all adjectives. So to make the negative, what do? Well, we take the negative one and again, add ly. Unluckily, unfortunately, uncomfortably, impatiently, carelessly. So that one is the same. So adverbs are kind of easy. Add ly, just add ly, you'll be done. The hard thing are the adjectives. And it's really just knowing the positive. What are the positive adjective forms? Is it an able adjective? Is it an e adjective? Is it a full adjective? But once you know the adjective, if you know the adjective, the rest follow rules. So if it's an e adjective, lucky, well then we just add unlucky. Then the adverb, luckily. The negative adverb, unluckily. Is it an at adjective, ate? Well then I know, okay. Unfortunately, fortunately, unfortunately. It'll follow the rules. Is it an able adjective? It's as if able, well then I know again. Uncomfortable, comfortably, uncomfortably. It'll follow the rules. And then even if I know it's a full adjective, I know the negative is less, and then the positive adverbs are ly again. So if you learn this form, you can know the rest because the rest follow the rules. It's just knowing full is less negative, p becomes im, and then uncomfortable for the rest. And it's just learning those connections for prefix and suffix. All right. that's all I have for today. That's all the material. So just as a quick review, what did we talk about today? Well, we did a conditional review. We talked about the first and the second, and then I talked about the new third conditional, talking about the past perfect with modal perfect would have past participle, to talk about how changing the past makes a different future. And then we talked a lot about contractions. We talked a lot about those double contractions. And as well, knowing that the past perfect and would are the same contraction, so you always have to look at the verb, and the verb will tell you what the contraction is. And then at the end, we talked about some rules for making adjectives and adverbs. All right. Well, thank you all so much for watching the lesson today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something new. Thank you for coming back to watch another lesson, and I hope to see you again. All right. Have a very good afternoon. Bye-bye.